Hello, everyone, and welcome to the SGP and Fantasy Football Podcast. We are getting it going early this morning. I am about as fresh as that McDonald's cheeseburger I got on the way home last night after bartending. I'm ready to roll, though. I'm joined by JC. I'm very happy on, man. How you doing?
Good, Emerson. How are you? I'm happy that you're able to get out of bed this morning, and we're going to talk a little Kansas City Chiefs, Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl action, and some dynasty stuff. So always a good morning.
Yeah, well, we're on the same boat. You have a kid. I bartend. Well, you're actually in a worse boat than I am. You're running on less sleep than I am over a long period of time. So I'm going to try to suck it up here and get going here. I just got to give a quick shout out to WynnBET before we start talking about that Super Bowl stuff, though. WynnBET is the official online sportsbook of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. WynnBET is active in a bunch of states, and there are tons of ways to win, including live betting and same game parlays, aka WynnBET's build your own bet. It is now brought to you in Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Louisiana, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Tennessee, and Virginia as well. From same-game parlays to live in-game odds, WynnBET has what you need to win. Sign up today, bet $100 and get $100 at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WynnBET. We're also brought to you by SGPN's Big Game Squares Contest, $1,000 prize pool, and completely free to enter. Just go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/squares to enter today. And if you're going to be out in Arizona for the big game, make sure to check out SGP's live show at the Ainsworth Thursday, 11 a.m. Register today at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/big game. And last thing I'll throw at you, we are giving away a signed Kenneth Walker jersey in the little subsection below there. You can just give us a 5-star review on the Apple Podcast, and then they'll be doing that drawing on Super Bowl Sunday. All right, my man, you know I'm excited to talk about the Super Bowl, though, this Sunday. Kansas City Chiefs, Philadelphia Eagles. I'm from Kansas City. I've lived in Denver for 10 years, but I grew up in Kansas City for 18 years, so obviously I'm a big Chiefs fan. I'm a little biased here, so maybe we'll kick off to you for some objective analysis, I should say.
Yeah, you're living behind enemy lines there in Denver, being a Kansas City Chiefs fan. That's pretty fun. It's interesting. Like we were talking about a little bit before the show. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is the quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs, and they're somehow an underdog. I don't know. I think for the most part, if you look at their rosters overall, I would say the Eagles probably have an advantage in most facets of the game. The only advantages they don't have are the quarterback and the head coach. And I think those are the two most important positions. Well, head coach is in a position, but it's the most tactical advantage, so to speak, for an NFL team. You watch Sirianni on the sideline. I just don't know if he's a Super Bowl winning coach. I don't know. Like the headline is Andy Reid going up against his former team that fired him, team that he gave, a lot of years to being the head coach of, and turning that team into a playoff relevant team for an organization that didn't have any playoff success. Some part of me is like, I just refuse to believe that Andy Reid loses this game and that Patrick Mahomes won't lose this game. I'm 27 years old, so Patrick Mahomes is around my age, and I would like to see him win another Super Bowl too. Yeah, well, because he's our generation's Brady in many ways. I want him to win multiple Super Bowls because I will get to say when I get older and my hair turns gray, I got to see one of the best to ever do it. I got to see Brady, but I'm a Steelers fan, so he tortured me for a good 2 decades. We won 2 Super Bowls in that time. One of the seasons, though, he tore his ACL. He wasn't even playing. So for by and large, yeah, the Steelers always had good teams, but I knew whenever we played the Patriots that it was just not going to end well. So while the Eagles may have a better roster, I just don't know how they're going to stop Patrick Mahomes. He'll do Patrick Mahomes stuff, and I think they'll win a close one. I think it'll be like a 31-27-ish game, but I got the Chiefs.
I like it. Yeah, I agree with you there. I think there's a gap between Mahomes and the rest of the quarterbacks in this league. I think he's in a tier by himself.
Yeah,
we have an advantage at tight end. Travis Kelce is going to be a cheat code out there. And another big thing. I think the best defensive player on the field will be Chris Jones this week. That guy was an animal last week. Just devastating. Joe. I was very happy to see Joe Burrow and Josh Allen these last couple playoff runs. Man, they've just been. We've been breaking tackles back there. Chris Jones and Frank Clark have been right there. They've shrugged them off. They've made some big plays downfield after extending the play. That didn't seem to be the case last week. They were playing against some backup offensive linemen, but Chris Jones dominated the way he should. Frank Clark got a sack. Our rookie, Karlaftis got a sack too. I always mispronounce his name.
Karlaftis, yeah.
Karlaftis, yeah. He was very good too. So I'm excited to see this game. I think it could be a little bit lower scoring than some are anticipating. I think the defense has come to play. Jalen Hurts hasn't quite looked the same off that shoulder injury. So I'm predicting maybe somewhere 24-21 Kansas City Chiefs. I love this spot being an underdog, though. That doesn't happen too often for Patrick Mahomes. I love that talk last week. I think it helped us against the Bengals last week. So I'm fine going into the underdog, but I'm rolling in somewhere 24-21.
All right. Yeah, sounds good. I hope they win too. I think it'll be a better story. I'd like to see Andy Reid stick it to Philly.
I love it. Yeah. Nobody wants to see obnoxious Philly fans win it anyway. They throw snowballs at Santa Claus. That's not fun. You know what I mean?
Nobody likes them and they don't care.
And I already saw them. I see them online. Like, where's the fight? Where's the fighting? They're looking for something from the Kansas City. Everybody makes fun of Eagles fans, so they're used to it. But they're like, what's the deal? No, Kansas City fans aren't coming at us or anything like that. Unless you're Bronco fans or you're the Bengals and your mayor is saying that Patrick Mahomes needs a DNA test or something like that. In which case we will come after you after the game. But
what a jabroni!
What a jabroni! Yes, exactly. But if you're respectable, at least to us, I won't have much to say to you probably before or after the game. So
yeah, absolutely.
With that, it is Dynasty Fantasy Football season. It is that, the people paying attention to fantasy football right now are usually the Dynasty people, the hardcore people that never stop paying attention. So with that, I figured we'd do some Dynasty Fantasy Football trade advice today. Before we get into that, I'm just going to do one more quick shout out to our friends at WynnBET who provide this show for us. WynnBET is the official online sportsbook of the Sports Gambling Podcast and the Sports Gambling Fantasy Football Show. WynnBET is active in a bunch of states, and there are tons of ways to win, including live betting and same-game parlays. Great promos, odds, and payouts are happening right now. WynnBET, ready to play. Sign up today and receive a special offer. Bet $100, get $100, limited to state availability. And, of course, if you hit the biggest long shot parlay of the week, you get a $1,000 free credit. There's so much to choose from. All you have to do is head over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WynnBET so they know we sent you. Offer subject to change. Terms and conditions at wynnbet.com. Must be 21 or older and present in the state where playthrough WynnBET is available. If you or someone has a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. Also, if you're going to be in Arizona for the big game, make sure to check out SGP's live show at the Ainsworth Thursday, 11 a.m. Register at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/big game. The show is free, and you'll be able to watch the show and have drinks with the guys. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/big game. All right, I figured we'd start off with the quarterbacks, though, today. I put my list in there for you, so I was curious what you thought about some of these guys. I tried to find some kind of polarizing players, some ones that I had written about recently that the consensus is definitely not there on. First guy I had up here was Trey Lance, though, and I'm curious about what your thoughts here. We just saw Brock Purdy go out with a UCL injury. He's not projected to be ready till sometime probably in the middle of the summer, June, July area, and so it's about a 6-month recovery timeline. He was the last pick in the draft. People were kind of, thinking that he was going to walk into the starting job next year. I don't think that is the case anymore. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because if the 49ers do win that NFC Championship game, if he stays healthy and they somehow pull it out, they get to a Super Bowl. Now you're talking about, okay, well, they just got to a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy at quarterback. Trey Lance has played, like 5-6 games as a 49er. So Purdy's probably dressed and played more games as a 49er than Trey Lance, and he's only been in the league for 1 year. Trey Lance got drafted in that Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence draft and stuff. I just don't really see how we go into next season and Trey Lance isn't the starting quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. And if you look at the success that Brock Purdy has enjoyed as the 49ers quarterback, I don't see how Trey Lance can't at least do the exact same thing as Brock Purdy. Now, the only caveat I will give is that because he's a mobile quarterback and because Kyle Shanahan wants this mobile quarterback in this offense, does he open up the playbook and he makes things a little more complex and a little more complicated for a guy that's only played 6 games over the last 3 seasons? Because that last college season, he only played like the one dress rehearsal game at North Dakota State, and then he didn't really play because of the COVID year. So that's not a ton of game time to play to develop your game. And it's a lot of this stuff, like you kind of have to see it. Like it's not just watching film. You have to be out there. You have to go through your progressions. You have to do things to elevate your quarterback play. I do think Trey Lance is ultimately a buy. I've gotten a lot of trade advice from, or people like asking what we should value Trey Lance at in this rookie class. I've done a ton of rookie stuff over the last. I'm big into Devi, so I've been following these guys for a number of years now. I think Trey Lance probably slots in if you could get him for like the 106. If you get him for like a 106 and then like a late second or something like that, that's like a risk that I'm willing to take to buy Trey Lance at this point. It's like 208 on probably something like that. So like a mid first, late second. I think that's something I'd be willing to buy Trey Lance for and just hope that Kyle Shanahan could do what he did with Brock Purdy with him.
Yeah, that was even more than I thought. I've been trying to maybe, late first, late second, try to send that offer out. I'm sure if Brock Purdy didn't get hurt, he probably would have even been a better buy low, honestly. But,
yep.
I think some people are going to expect that now. But Brock Purdy, there's just zero chance I think that he's able to hold, he's not going to be practicing until June or July. And I just don't think there's a chance that San Francisco, when he just his first day back, they're like, well, welcome back, starting job, walk in first string, you know what I mean? So I think it'll be Trey Lance, he'll be operating the offense in mini camp and early practices. I think they'll roll, and he's probably not going to look terrible in shorts, you know what I mean? So he's probably going to be the week one starter. What he will be on is probably a short leash. If Trey Lance goes in and struggles next year, they probably will go to Purdy pretty quickly. So, that is the negative. If you're, it is a little bit of risk. That's why he's a buy. But yeah, could be on a short leash next year. But we saw with Justin Fields that with these rushing quarterbacks, somebody is, kind of who's in that Justin Fields stratosphere. You don't need a lot of passing production to even be fantasy relevant, really. And it's the Chicago offense and the San Francisco offense are a lot different. You have some of the best players in the league on the San Francisco offense. So, Trey Lance just dumping off to Christian McCaffrey is going to have a lot of success, a lot of games. So Trey Lance is a great buy for me right now. Although, yeah, like I said, if he struggles next year, maybe he's a better fantasy quarterback than an NFL quarterback. I could see them going back to Brock Purdy, though. Next man up, here's another mobile quarterback. I have Lamar Jackson as my next man up here, and it just has not been the same for Lamar Jackson the last few years. Outside of quarterback 12 Troy the last 2 years, then quarterback 10 in 2020, ever since that MVP year. He's still being treated as a top 6-7 dynasty quarterback in most people's rankings. Now, you're not going to be able to sell him to everybody. There are people who, like me, who are a little bit nervous, well aware, but, he has people who love him. There's going to be somebody who's willing, he's going to be ranked probably consistently top 6, top 7 quarterback next year. I think you can still get very good value for Lamar Jackson. That's why I'm suggesting him as a sell. You can still get top 7 or 8 quarterback value. And this is the last year you might be able to do it, because if he struggles again next year, if he does not meet the expectations next year, his value will drop in dynasty leagues, So he's right up there. He's not in that Lamar Jackson. I mean, he's not in that Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes tier right now, but he's probably right in that second tier, maybe towards the bottom of that second tier right now. But so I still think you can get a lot of value for him. And I think he is somebody that, if I have him on my rosters, I'll be shopping this offseason. What do you think?
I like it. Yeah. There's another guy that we're probably gonna be talking about here in a couple minutes that I think you could employ the same kind of strategy with Lamar Jackson as opposed to this guy as well. Yeah. I think if you could go to the team that has the 102 or the 103 in the rookie draft and trade for what would probably most likely be Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, unless Anthony Richardson does get the draft capital, you could probably trade for the 102 or 103 and then like an impact wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, maybe like an RB2 if you need that too. I just think there's better ways to turn Lamar Jackson into another quarterback that's young, that'll be controlled in his contract for 5 years probably. And you could get something that could also help your team. So I like the idea of selling Lamar Jackson, actually.
Yeah, it's just, like I said, it just has not been the same last couple of years. It's obviously not all his fault. Injuries have played a part in it. Baltimore is kind of like Green Bay. They just never give this man any receivers to throw to. And after Bateman went out last year, it just, there was nobody to throw to on the outside. Lamar Jackson only had 7 touchdown passes after week 4, after having 10 in the first 3 games. The wheels just kind of fell off for that offense. You know, they had Sammy Watkins and Demarcus Robinson out there, and I could tell you as a Kansas City Chiefs fan, I felt really bad for them. That was on those guys, man, gave me nightmares when they were playing for the Kansas City Chiefs. A lot of times, specifically Demarcus Robinson, who, you know, I don't want to be mean, but I sometimes that, you know, I think he maybe makes teams worse. You know, like when a team signs him, I'm like, oh no, like they just got worse.
Yeah. And it's crazy that they signed Demarcus Robinson. He's probably like their second best wide receiver on the team.
That's not good. Trust me. Demarcus Robinson, when he was playing for Kansas City, every game was a boneheaded play. Please do not get him on punt or kick return, for God's sake. Please do not do that, Baltimore. But we'll see. I'm sure that they'll be in better shape next season. Yeah. But we better hope for Lamar Jackson's sake. But some of the names that I had written down here was Deshaun Watson, Kyler Murray, and CeeDee Lamb. And I think you could probably get an add-on for all those players. You know what I mean? So, yeah, specifically CeeDee Lamb, you know, I'd be looking for like a late 23 first on top. But I do have Deshaun Watson ahead of my dynasty rankings. And I also have Kyler Murray ahead of my dynasty rankings too. Next man up here, we'll go to the guy that you were probably talking about here, Kyler Murray. Is that who you were speaking of earlier?
Yep.
Yes. I'm a little bit on the opposite of Kyler. I think he's a great buy this offseason because of that ACL injury, because kind of, you know, that perception of where the Arizona offense is. You know, he's a video game guy. Everybody makes fun of him for that, and you know the kind of contract stipulation that he has. So he has some bad PR right now that I think is depressing his fantasy value. You know, he's probably ranked in a low quarterback one in dynasty leagues right now, but he was 7th in fantasy points per game last year. He's coming off an ACL, so he maybe not start off the season a little slow, one of those two. But Tyreek Hill, Christian McCaffrey, a mid-23 first and a mid-23 second were some of the trades that I had written down. What are you doing with Kyler Murray this offseason?
Yeah, so something very similar to Lamar. I think one of the things that's most concerning to me is that Cardinals head coaching job still has not been filled. So I know they just hired Monty Austin for it and stuff, but you know, he's been there now for a week or two. So all these other teams are kind of hiring head coaches. I know the Colts are still going through like their 3rd round of interviews or whatever. But if you have Kyler Murray, who's a franchise quarterback, he's locked into this contract. How are there not head coaching candidates that are jumping at the bit to get this head coaching job to be working with Kyler Murray? That kind of says to me that people don't want to work with Kyler Murray. Now, I know he is a good fantasy quarterback because he's mobile. He could throw the ball. They're talking about moving DeAndre Hopkins this offseason. So he'll be left with Hollywood Brown and Zach Ertz, who's like 33 years old, who tore his ACL, and Trey McBride, who they just drafted, but he couldn't get his way onto the field. And then when he did get on the field, when Zach Ertz was injured, I don't know if he really was playing at a super high level. I know he's a rookie tight end, but it wasn't looking good for him either. I'm a little lower on Kyler Murray's outlook over the next couple of years, given the fact that they have to pay him $46 million a year. I don't know who they're bringing in outside of the draft to kind of make up for that loss of production and DeAndre Hopkins' eventual departure from the team. So I think I'd be looking for a similar Lamar Jackson kind of, you know, selling them off for the 102, 103 and getting like a wide receiver that, yeah, you're losing the name brand of Kyler Murray, but you're getting a guy that probably will put up similar production to Kyler Murray next season because he'll probably miss like a month with the ACL. And then after that, I don't know, you might have like a better quarterback on your hands. Look at the jump that Trevor Lawrence took from year 1 to year 2. You know, sometimes these rookie quarterbacks make that jump, and Kyler Murray will be another year older, and maybe he's less mobile.
That's fair. You know, I just think when I look at Kyler Murray still, you know, I just attribute a lot of those struggles to the Arizona offense last year. It just was a little bit of a mess. And man, I just still saw a quarterback who was, you know, he was playing very well. You know, he's a little sporadic lately, you know, and he's not using those legs quite as much as he was the first couple of years, which is kind of limiting his fantasy upside just a little bit. But just when I look at the quarterback landscape, you know, especially when we get outside the, you know, 10 or 12 guys, you know, Kyler Murray, you know, Kyler Murray's right there. You know what I mean? So yep. I just don't see them making any changes anytime soon. You know what I mean? So as long as I see Kyler Murray starting, you know, these next few years and you know, probably for the foreseeable future, I think he's going to be very productive in fantasy football. You know, maybe we'll have some critiques for him. Maybe he's not the best leader. You know, we've kind of seen that from Patrick Peterson calling him out and stuff. You know, maybe he's not the best leader, Maybe he does play too many video games. Maybe some people don't want to work with him. However, for fantasy football, as long as he's starting in the NFL, which I think he will be for a long time, I think he's going to have a lot of fantasy value. So that's where my head's at there.
Mm.
The next guy I have up here, Kirk Cousins. I have is a big sell for me this offseason. And, it's not that he's ever commanded super great, serious value or anything like that. He's kind of always been a little bit underappreciated, in fact, in fantasy football. However, I just think, with some of the quarterbacks last year, kind of struggling, some aging out, I just think, he's right on probably the fringe of Dynasty 1 quarterback territory in a lot of leagues, top 12, that right on that fringe. And, I just think this is the last year that you're going to be able to get that kind of value. In super flex leagues, people are always looking for quarterbacks, especially for, kind of this summer. I think Kirk Cousins will have a market for those people looking for a quarterback, and you'll be able to get maybe like a 24 first round pick or something for him. Late 23 first, Najee Harris, DJ Moore, adding for Deshaun Watson were some of the trades that I had listed here. But he's going to be, I believe, what did I have it? Oh, I didn't write it down. He's going to be 35 to start next season, I think.
Somewhere around there, yeah.
So yeah, I think he's going to be 35 to start next season. He's had a long career. And he's had success with the Vikings, but they have not gotten over the hump. And they've ran it back and they've ran it back and they've ran it back. Speculation that Kirk Cousins, it was light speculation that, he may call it quits this offseason. I don't know. That probably wasn't even real. Just kind of like, but it's out there. I just don't see Kirk Cousins and the Vikings staying together for too much longer. They'll be on the field together in 2023. If they don't have a deep playoff run, though, I'm not sure it keeps going on after that. So if Kirk Cousins changes teams at 36 years old, he's not going to have a lot of dynasty value. He could retire. So yeah, this is my like kind of last chance sell opportunity for Kirk Cousins this offseason. I think you can probably, due to the super flex kind of people always looking for quarterbacks, I think you can still probably get a first round pick for him too. What do you think?
I like it. Yeah. It's always better to get out on somebody a little too early than it is way too late. So like you're saying, and looking forward to the 2024 class, you're going to have Caleb Williams at quarterback. You're going to have Drake May at quarterback. You're going to have Quinn Ewers at quarterback. Jordan Travis at Florida State is another guy that could be coming up the ranks. Bo Nix at Oregon. So there are guys that are coming out of the 2024 class at quarterback that you could be looking to move Kirk Cousins. The only way that you're keeping Kirk Cousins is if you're a contending team. If you're a middle of the road team, if you're a rebuild team, you're obviously shipping him out. I don't think anybody's making a discussion about that. If you're a contending team and you need a quarterback in a super flex league, I'd be okay paying a late first for Kirk Cousins. That's fine. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it, but I definitely would not be going out and buying Kirk Cousins with the anticipation that over the next 3 years he's going to be a quarterback one in super flex. I just don't think that's going to happen. So I agree with you.
Yeah, I just think we're getting to the end. How many times can you keep doing the same thing? You know what I mean? It kind of was like Kansas City Chiefs and Alex Smith. Obviously the Vikings don't have their replacement yet, but that you could see them going in that direction. Even if there's a second or third round quarterback, that's what they did with Kellen Mond, a year or two ago, and obviously he didn't work out. But they could do that same thing. Draft a quarterback in the second or third round, see how he looks in practice, give him a year to develop under Kirk Cousins, and we'll see what happens. Last name I had up under the quarterbacks was Russell Wilson. I just think, it's really tough. He's had a slow couple years, but man, this was the guy who finished prior to the last 2 years as a quarterback, top 10 quarterback, I think like 8 straight seasons. So, he has a very strong career of fantasy production behind him, and he's behind like Jared Goff and Geno Smith in Dynasty Football rankings right now. He's top 5 quarterback in 3 of his final 4 games, a lot of weapons. Sean Payton was just hired. I think we could see a bounce back this year. I'm not saying he's going to jump back into elite quarterback 1 territory, but bounce back. Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Greg Dulcich. I think, a lot of weapons. Sean Payton, great offensive mind. What do you think? I think we could see a bounce back, low end quarterback 1 season here in 2023.
Yeah. I mean, the time to buy Russell Wilson, I suppose, was towards the end of last season with the Sean Payton bump. I think he's going to be more valued than he was just like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. So I have a home league that my quarterbacks are Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Tannehill, I believe were my 3 quarterbacks. And with the speculation that Rodgers could potentially be done at the end of 2022 and Tannehill getting injured, I was going to a playoff run. I paid a late first for Russell Wilson. I'm still comfortable paying a late first for Russell Wilson at this stage. I think, like you said, the last month of the season, he had overall, QB5 finish or something like that. Jerry Jeudy, when he's healthy, is a great receiver. Cortland Sutton isn't what everybody thought he was going to. A lot of people were saying he was going to be like the DK Metcalf of this offense. He's not even in the same ballpark in terms of overall talent as DK Metcalf, but I suppose he does fit like that kind of role for this offense. Tim Patrick coming back off the ACL. Hopefully he could contribute something to the offense. And then
Paused it.
Greg
Oh,
Dulcich.
perfect. He's back. You paused for a second. I was like, oh no, he's gone. No, he's back. That was just for like a second. No, I totally agree with you. It's like that was silly last year. Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton. Like I didn't get it. I was just like, what? And it's like, I studied both guys for a long time. I was like, how? What? And like they played together these last 2 years. Every time they're on the field together, Jerry Jeudy has more points, is more productive. It just didn't make sense to me. They just, people were like, Cortland Sutton's going to be better. I'm like, why? And until they got to practice, look at the practice videos. But there's Jerry Jeudy. Russell Wilson's thrown to Jerry Jeudy in practice too. But it was very selective media taken, just shove those Jerry Jeudy hype videos way down here. And just all I saw was Russell Wilson throwing to Cortland Sutton last summer. I finally was just like, fine, I guess that's what it is. And then I ended up putting Cortland. I changed my rankings last second before the season, put Cortland Sutton just ahead of Jerry Jeudy. Mistake. I should have stuck with my gut.
2021, Cortland Sutton, when Jerry Jeudy was out with the high ankle sprain, he had 16.7 points per game. When Jerry Jeudy was playing, he was the wide receiver 90 overall in fantasy football. When Jerry Jeudy's on the field, Cortland Sutton is a significant afterthought. And the argument was, oh, well, Russell Wilson's there now. They don't have Teddy Bridgewater throwing the ball. The offense is different. When the difference is that drastic, I don't care who's throwing the ball. One guy is clearly better than the other one. So yes. I've been a Jerry Jeudy guy since he came out. When he was a prospect, he was my wide receiver 1 in the class. Obviously, Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb are better receivers in the NFL than him. But I think Jerry Jeudy's kind of been a victim of circumstance in a way in Denver. And hopefully with Sean Payton being there, he can unlock him the way that he unlocked Brandon Cooks and Michael Thomas for those Saints teams. And we could get Jerry Jeudy finally at the ceiling that we thought that he could be playing at. So that'd be fun for the 2020 receiver class overall as well.
Wide receiver 11 since week 7 in fantasy points per game.
He's a great player.
Yep. And a nice and strong draft profile. We're gonna talk about him when we get to the wide receiver section. Yep. Before we get into the running backs, I'm going to do our last promo of the day. Just going to talk about our Big Game Squares contest. SGPN is giving away $1,000 in their Big Game Squares contest. It's completely free to enter. All you need to do is follow the Sports Gambling Podcast on Spotify and give them a rating. Then go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/squares to enter for your chance to win a free Big Game Square. Big Game Bingo is also going on. And also make sure to sign up for that on the SGPN app and get your own Big Game Bingo card full of all of your favorite big game prop bets. If you get bingo, you'll win a $57 SGPN gift card. Only catch is you must be subscribed to the Sports Gambling Podcast and NFL Gambling Podcast on YouTube to win. Free to play and exclusively on the SGPN app. Man, they are just giving away tons of stuff today. And don't forget about that Kenneth Walker jersey. Just throw in and review on that Spotify. Thanks, man. And you'll get a chance to win. And they'll be doing that drawing on Super Bowl Sunday. All right. Running backs it is. I have the first name I have up here, and this is kind of a classic. I'm cheating, old running back selling Christian McCaffrey. But when I see a running back entering his 7th NFL season and he's still a top 5 dynasty running back, that's going to be a sell for me. He's not going to have a market to everybody. I'll get people yelling at me, being like, you can't get proper value for Christian McCaffrey. He's, such and such. He's older now. He's a great player. Just write him out. I disagree. I think there, especially when we get closer to the season, June, July, August, when people are looking for running backs, I think you can get good value for Christian McCaffrey. If you're trying to trade for a 23 first and peak hype season, you might not get great value for him. But if you want to go for wide receivers instead, if you want to maybe look for 24 picks, I think you can get a lot of value for Christian McCaffrey still. I had DK Metcalf, I had Kyle Pitts, and I had a late 23 first and 24 first as some of my possible trade targets. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many mock drafts you've done so far for Superflex mocks and stuff. We typically at Dynasty Domain, we do one probably like once a week. He's consistently going in the mid to late second round. So in dynasty startups, so he's still being valued very highly. I think it all depends on Superflex.
That's way too early for me.
Yeah. So, I think he's still a very highly valued asset. Little inside baseball for me, kind of. I have a team that I was rebuilding, but now I'm heading into what I believe could be a contending year. So I went out and paid Kenneth Walker and a 24 second for Christian McCaffrey and a 24 first. So the reason why I did this was because I believe that Christian McCaffrey will give me more production in 2023 than Kenneth Walker will give me.
I see where your head's at with that one, and then you're going to have a first to then build off of after that. I see where your head's at. I like that.
But you get to give the argument. Well, Kenneth Walker is 23. He's coming off like a great rookie season. He's got his entire career ahead of him. Christian McCaffrey, you could say that he's got like 1 or 2 years left, and that might be it. I don't know if he's really a buy, because at those prices, like I just said, I don't know any team that's drafting him there or values him there and is willing to sell. And any team that is looking to sell obviously wouldn't want a running back that's heading into year 7 of his contract. So he is like in like that gray area kind of. I guess if I had to pick a side, I would probably want to sell him, but that's typically the case with most running backs.
Yeah, especially this time of year. So I always feel like I'm cheating a little bit. Everyone's just like, oh, pick the old running back to sell in January. Yeah, right. No one's buying. Well, you're right. You know what? I do admit Christian McCaffrey is probably not someone you could sell today, but this is someone who I will be, as soon as we get past the draft, as soon as we start getting to the summer, if he's still on my team, I will be looking to, put out some offers out there at least. Next up, though, I have Najee Harris. He's one of my favorite buys of the offseason. I just think he got a little bit of an unfair shake last year. Liz Frank's sprain, I think, is what they called it in the preseason. And then he was adjusting to a new quarterback too that wasn't getting him anywhere. So yeah, this is perfect. You're a Pittsburgh fan, so I'm interested to hear your thoughts. So obviously Kenny Pickett didn't give him anywhere near the target load. It was just dump off to Najee Harris. Ben Roethlisberger wanted no part of getting hit in 2021. Just like get it to Najee Harris, throw it out there. So I see him behind DeAndre Swift, Joe Mixon, and Tony Pollard in dynasty rankings. I would swap any of those guys out for Najee Harris personally. I think he's going to get a really high workload next year. So yeah, I think they're going to keep the ball at Kenny Pickett's hand. I didn't see, I think he started off the season last year slow because he wasn't very healthy. He got more and more of the snap. Jaylen Warren was working in at that point, and then Najee Harris kind of took back control a little bit towards the end of the season. Top 15 running back for the final 5 games. Yeah, I like Najee Harris this year. What do you think?
Yeah, he was the RB7 from weeks 10 to 18. So their bye week was week 9. And then when they came back from the bye week, I think his foot was finally feeling better and he was able to cut more on it and not be just a plotter, just running it right up the guard's ass, so to speak, for like 3 yards, So it was rough for the first couple of months of the season. He definitely did not look like the dynamic athlete that he can be at his size, given that he's 6'1", 240. So, I mean, you're talking about a guy that, he had 93 targets his rookie season. So that was insane. Like that probably wasn't going to happen again. But I do think that he adds a little bit in the receiving game as well. You're talking about a guy that was an RB3 as a rookie and overall in fantasy football. Like you said, for those guys that are valued over him, DeAndre Swift has never been an RB1 his entire fantasy career. So I don't personally, and he's not even the starting running back. So I don't see how you could value him over Najee Harris when they've been out on the field now for multiple years. DeAndre Swift for 3, Najee for 2, and Najee has been far more productive than DeAndre Swift. He actually plays through injury as well. DeAndre Swift gets injured every single year and misses 3 to 4 games with a shoulder injury, leg injury, concussion, whatever have you. He's not the player that Najee Harris is, and everybody wants to make him out like that because he could catch a ball and run 60 yards, and that's not really a Najee's game. But Najee, for a Steelers running back, they want the bell cow running back. So Najee's going to continue to get the work. He's going to continue to be productive. People don't like the fact that he's not super efficient because he has had like 3.8 and 3.7 yards per carry his first 2 years. it doesn't matter when you get like 250, 300 carries. Like volume is king when you're talking about running back, and Najee Harris is still a young 24 years old at the running back position. So he's a buy for me as well.
Yeah, it's just, I'm not sure he's gotten 100% fair shake these last couple of years. You know what I mean? It's Ben Roethlisberger who, teams were focusing on Najee Harris then, and then last year the offensive line wasn't great, and you have Kenny Pickett, a rookie quarterback. Yeah, I don't think he got a fair shake. I'd like to see what he does this year, especially with Kenny Pickett developing. We do have a question here jumping in. 12-team Superflex, half PPR. I have Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, DK, London, Breece Hall, Javonte Williams, Pat Freiermuth, 1-1, 1-4, 2-1. Offered DJ Moore and Swift for 1-4 and 2-1. Thoughts? I think that's who's going to be there at the 1-4. You think that's going to be the third quarterback, the first wide receiver? Jahmyr Gibbs, probably. That's what my last thing was going to be. So. Yeah, that's what do you think of that trade?
So for me, that puts an evaluation of Swift for the 104 and DJ Moore for the 201.
I almost had the opposite. I almost had the opposite thought. I almost flipped it. But yeah, for sure. That's what my first thought was too.
So I think either way, I don't think either one of those players are worth the 104. So
yeah, the 104 is the best asset in the deal.
Yeah, I would lean 104 and 201, and especially in this class. I mean, I do at least one rookie mock a night, probably. The 201 is going to be a very good player, and a player that will probably gain value over the next year. I mean, DJ Moore is getting Frank Reich as his head coach now. God only knows who their quarterback's going to be. Frank Reich is supposed to be a quarterback whisperer. I don't know. It really hasn't worked out the last couple of years, and now he's on another stint now with a team that also doesn't have a franchise quarterback, that he's just going to reach his hand into the fishbowl, so to speak, and pull out a pair of keys and hope that this guy is going to be the franchise guy. I just don't. I'm out on DJ Moore. I think he's a perfectly fine wide receiver 3. Maybe like wide receiver 2. Like if everything works right for him, like on boom weeks. But yeah, I'll take the 104 and the 201 because they're just going to accrue value as the offseason goes on into May after the draft.
This is a tough one for me. This must mean it's pretty even because I keep going back and forth. The 1-4 is the best asset in the deal, but I think the next two, I think DJ Moore and Swift are the 2-1's the worst asset in the deal. So it's pretty even. Man, that is just a lot of talent to give up. DJ Moore and DeAndre Swift are very, very talented players, and they just, they haven't put together the fantasy. But man, if they reach their potential this year, it's just like, oh man, that would be rough. But man, I
think it is a fair trade. I don't see a world where the 104 and the 201 lose value over the course of the offseason heading into May. I do see a world where both DJ Moore and DeAndre Swift lose value, though.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the 2-1's going to be a good enough player. But he did ask, by the way, who do you think will be around the 2-1?
So you're looking at probably, I would say, 3 wide receivers that are definitely going to be off the board in the first round are JSN, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Quentin Johnston, and Jordan Addison. I think Josh Downs could be available at the 201. I think Kayshon Boutte could be available at the 201.
You think we get 4 quarterbacks in the first round?
Yeah, I do think we do.
So that'll push down some value for sure.
Yep. Between Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson. I think all 4 of those guys are going to go in the first round. Richardson with his rushing upside. I have Richardson as my QB3 in the class. I think he's
ahead of Levis.
Ahead of Levis. I think he's definitely a tier ahead of Levis. He's like 3 years younger than Levis. He's got virtually the same arm talent, except he's just significantly more mobile at the quarterback position. You watch Anthony Richardson highlights. I mean, you throw a Titans jersey on, the guy might be Derrick Henry running around on down the sideline, cutting up through the tackles and stuff. So I'm excited about Anthony Richardson. I think he could potentially get some pretty good draft capital here. And if that's the case, I think he moves up the rookie boards even more. But yeah, I think I like the 104 and the 201, but I do agree with you. I may have been a little dismissive just because I'm not a DeAndre Swift guy, if you've listened to me talk about him at all. So I like 104 and 201.
I think you convinced me. I think I agree with that just because Gibbs is a very good player. And I think, yeah, you're still going to get a top 5 wide receiver or running back at that 2-1. somebody, I expect probably 3 to 4 running backs, 3 to 4 wide receivers, 4 quarterbacks to go in that first round. So you'll still have a very good player there. So I think you're right. I think that pick package is just slightly ahead for me, but it is close. Thanks for the question, Jake. Next man up I had here was Tyler Algier. This is just a classic sell for me. In fact, I'll link up these two guys just together because my argument is the same. Tyler Algier and Dameon Pierce, I have both up here as dynasty sells. Just mid-tier draft capital, marginal talent, not elite athletic profiles. These aren't players that usually stick to a running back job for a long time. Usually running backs, are rotated through like crazy, even the talented ones. And, the 2023 free agent class that is so deep, the 2023 rookie class for running backs is really, really deep. I think you're going to get players with better draft profiles than Tyler Algier and Dameon Pierce available in that 4th and 5th round. Just like Dameon Pierce and Tyler Algier were drafted in the 4th and 5th round last year, I think you'll see running backs with, better draft profiles, more athleticism available in the 4th or 5th round, which makes them, their job is very volatile in my opinion. Some people might anticipate that. So their value, could be a little bit on shaky grounds this year, on the early offseason. No one likes to trade for running backs in February and January for that reason. But, they are very young and did have productive years, so they could have a market. Dameon Pierce obviously started off a little bit more hot, ended up getting injured. Productivity slipped a little bit at the end of the year. Tyler Algier, on the other hand, finished very strong, top 15th running back 4 straight games. I think you might have a little bit more of a market on him. I was doing my way too early running back rankings last week, and I had people posting in the comments, where's Tyler Algier in the top 12? So, that's pretty crazy to me, that kind of talk already. So if people are on that, I'll be shopping some Tyler Algier this year. Dameon Pierce, these guys are obviously, if they end up holding on to the jobs in summer, they'll have more value. And certainly at that point, I'd be looking to sell them too. What do you think?
Yeah, they're both. I think it's smart to lump these guys into the same category. With the teams that they play on, those rosters have so many holes that do I think that they're going to take either the Falcons or the Texans? Do I think they're going to take a running back in day 1 or day 2? I wouldn't, because I don't think they need. That's not the biggest.
Teams always do it though. Like we always say that the teams end up doing it anyway.
I do think they bring in a guy day 3 bare minimum though, and they're probably the same level of talent. Like Dameon Pierce is competing against Rex Burkhead and like Dario Ogunbowale for carries. Like obviously he was going to get the bulk of the work. I did look up Ty Algier though, just to see like some advanced metrics to see, because he had probably the quietest 1,000-yard rushing season that I can remember in recent memory. Mm-hmm. So he tied for 3rd in yards after contact per attempt.
His metrics are actually very good. Tyler Algier, you go to Player Profiler, like it's bam, bam, bam. Whereas Dameon Pierce, it's, the underlying metrics suggest maybe he wasn't that good.
He was not very efficient with his work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, Ty Algier, on the other hand, was fairly efficient with his work. Mm-hmm. He tied Nick Chubb and Ramondre Stevenson for yards after contact per attempt. He was 11th in missed tackles in the NFL, 9th in broken tackles and broken tackles for attempt. He was 3rd in catch rate. He only had 17 targets, but 3rd at the position. And he tied Christian McCaffrey in yards per reception with 8.7 yards per catch. So if you could get like a early to mid second for either one of these guys at this point in time, I'm taking it. Mm-hmm. If you could buy them for like 210 to 212, or maybe even like a 3rd, because you give the same argument that he's a 5th round pick, they're going to draft somebody else and this guy's gonna be worthless. I think I'm buying Ty Algier for that price. I still don't think I'm buying Dameon Pierce for that price though.
I could see it. Yeah, you know what? I know I just put him as a sell. If you were ever going to buy these players, now is the time. Mm-hmm. Because the uncertainty, people are afraid of the free agent class, the rookies. So if you ever were going to buy these players, I would do it now. But, it's just not part, neither of these. Tyler Algier, I think has a little bit of a brighter. He was more productive in college. He is, his underlying metrics last year, I was looking through their player profiler pages, they have a great setup of all the stats and everything. I was like, Tyler Algier is like, bam, just like breakaway run rate, evaded tackles, everything was there. So it's part of my process. Mid-round running back coming off successful season, I trade it. Like that's my model.
Yeah. To be fair, it's a good process. Typically, they don't last. You're talking about like a Michael Carter, for instance, from last season.
Yeah.
How he was probably valued as a top 20 dynasty running back, and then they draft Breece Hall, and the floor just drops out from underneath of them. So
yeah, that's the risk with running backs. I try to go, hero or zero for my running backs. If I'm going to pay up for a running back, I want to pay for a really young and talented running back. Like I just sent Jalen Waddle in the 111 for Bijan Robinson. The 1-1, but Bijan Robinson. So. That was hot. I just posted it to Twitter, and it got just people just really, tons of traction on it, just because I guess it's, the rookie draft's coming up. But I had a lot of people on both sides. People are like, great trade. Other people are like, what? You traded away a premier young wide receiver for a guy we don't even know where he's going yet, and you added the 111 on top. Like, what are you doing, man? So it was, it's interesting. So the running back position is always very strange in dynasty leagues, how it's valued, specifically in January and February. So it's really hard to trade these guys. Last up here, little buy, James Cook. It's over $700 purpose yards last year, second round draft capital. And, unlike these guys, some very good athletic measurables. So I like James Cook this offseason, whether, some interesting, it depends on who he's got him, I guess. But I was throwing out James Conner, late 23 second, maybe Dawson Knox. What do you think?
Yeah, so James Cook was my RB4 in the pre-draft process last season. I love James Cook as a talent. I think he went to a fairly crappy landing spot, considering that they just don't like to throw the ball to the running back, and his best skill set is, bar none, his receiving ability. I do have like a little bit of James Cook info for you here. So he had 19 less targets than Devin Singletary, despite Singletary leading in routes run over James Cook 318 to 109. So Singletary was targeted on 16.7% of his routes, as opposed to James Cook, who was targeted on 30.3% of his routes. So he tied with Christian McCaffrey for 5th in target percentage per route run. Devin Singletary has been in the top 5 of the NFL the last 2 seasons in routes run at the running back position. So if you're telling me Devin Singletary's leaving or he's going into free agency, James Cook towards the end of the season kind of came on and started getting more of the backfield work. If you're telling me that James Cook is going to inherit half of that work, so go from like 109 routes run to 218 routes run, and then whoever they bring in, because I think they will bring in a more traditional between the tackles runner, because it's something they just lacked over the last couple of years.
I think he maybe needs that too. I don't hate that for him.
Yeah, I mean, in college he worked with Zamir White, and he was fairly efficient in the touches that he received at Georgia. And I think it's probably better for James Cook's skill set that they should put him in the slot. They should put him out wide. They should put him in the shotgun and let him run angle routes and work these linebackers and use him as a receiving threat. He's a buy for me. Definitely.
I think I had him as my RB3 last year. I was drafting him at the 1-9, 110 in rookie draft. So I'm really hoping you're right. I thought, and he was definitely getting more of the work at the end of the year. Singletary's a free agent. I don't think I don't think a new running back's going to hurt him, because we're not expecting James Cook to be, a top 12 running back. That's not what we're asking him to do. We're asking him to be a starting top 24 running back that we can throw into our flex spot, throw into our RB2 spot, and feel okay about it, especially in PPR leagues. So I think there's certainly a good chance of that this year, and man, he was very efficient. I was looking at his yards per carry at the end of the year, just smoking Devin Singletary, just very efficient in his carries. So I think he's going to get some more work next season too. We'll dive into the wide receivers now. My first man up here, one of my favorite buys of the offseason, DK Metcalf, wide receiver 16 in PPR last year, but I don't think that really told the full story. 1,048 yards, 6 touchdowns. Started off the year a little slow though, adjusting to Geno Smith, but man, and Tyler Lockett was out targeting him at the first half of the season like he usually does. Tyler Lockett, just shocking us with his productivity, but the second half of the season, I think we really saw DK Metcalf seize a hold of that target share. Lockett, I meant to write down all these ages, but Lockett, I believe, is going to be 31 next season. I want to say 30. I just think, we're getting to that stage now where I know people are going to be like, keep doubting Tyler Lockett, man. He does it every year. Eventually, we have to be right.
Yeah.
DK Metcalf did out-target him by a lot at the end of the year. We saw DK Metcalf dominate in that playoff game against the San Francisco 49ers. We saw that chemistry with Geno Smith develop. I think we see him as the clear alpha wide receiver 1 in Seattle this year. I think I'm predicting only his second top 10, top 12 wide receiver finish of his career. So I did my way too early top 12 wide receiver rankings. I had DK Metcalf in there. And I really think he's a good buy. I have, he's behind T. Higgins, Devontae Adams, and Stephon Diggs in a lot of dynasty rankings. And I have him ahead of all those players in my rankings personally. Mid 23 first, Austin Eckler, I think are all possible trade options.
I like it. Yeah. I think there's another name on this sheet that you just mentioned, T. Higgins. I would sell I would try to buy DK and plus for T. Higgins 100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's a great buy. And I just posted some dynasty buys, dynasty sells on my Twitter as well. And T. Higgins was in the sell
I agree.
for me. Mm-hmm. He's wide receiver 8 on Keep Trade Cut. So he's ahead of Olave, Drake London, Devonta Smith, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs. I'm not taking him over any of those guys. So I think he may be like one of the biggest sells in Dynasty, given where he's valued by the Dynasty community as opposed to what he actually produces. He's never had a wide receiver 1 season in points per game his entire career. It's been 3 years. I don't think it's going to start magically happening year 4 because we want to will it into existence. He's a very good wide receiver 2, just like he's a very good wide receiver 2 on his actual NFL team.
I love the talent.
Yeah, great talent.
Yeah, he's so good, but he's inconsistent with Jamar Chase in the lineup because Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase have such a rapport that every time Jamar Chase is on the field, he gets 12 plus targets. So it leaves T. Higgins a little bit boom and bust. And I totally agree with you. Like I love T. Higgins, the player. Like he's usually a player I would have. I have him very high in my dynasty rankings. But yes, if he is the wide receiver 8, I think he's going to have to be traded to do that. And then you're running in a lot of risk. Then where's the situation? It's certainly a spotty track record of wide receivers changing teams and being productive. So there's just a lot of question marks at that point. And so the only way for him to succeed, reach that ranking, I think we ended up, we'll talk about T. Higgins and DK Metcalf. We're jumping into the T. Higgins one, but it's just, if we're expecting him to be a top 10 wide receiver, I think that's too much with Jamar Chase in the lineup. He'll have to go to another team. And then, we're running into a lot of risk at that point. So I actually had T. Higgins as one of my trades. I just don't think he's going to finish as a wide receiver 1. I had DK Metcalf. Garrett Wilson is somebody I would certainly trade T. Higgins straight up for. I would even add a second round pick on top. Early 23 first, I would certainly, I would probably take Gibbs, either the quarterbacks, of course, Bijan Robinson, and, I'd probably, maybe the 1-5-2 or so. Definitely a top 4 pick. I would end up trading him for that. So T. Higgins, just a little bit boom and bust for me for a wide receiver 1. I think you agree. And DK Metcalf, I just think, he's just such an uber athlete. And he just looks, he's the only guy, if we can get a shirtless NFL team together, of who's the best, it's DK Metcalf, Saquon Barkley, and David Njoku. Get your calendars ready. We can just go through those guys. So I love DK Metcalf this year. So so you're buying DK Metcalf, selling T. Higgins.
Yeah, I'm buying DK. Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's one of those guys that he is quarterback proof. So in more or less, even when Geno Smith wasn't the 2022 Geno Smith and he was 2021 Geno Smith, and everybody thought the floor would drop out from underneath of him. I believe DK was wide receiver 4, over that month-long period. So DK, regardless of who's throwing the ball, I'm not worried about it. He'll find a way to catch a touchdown. He'll find a way to take a slant route and break a couple of tackles and get that yards after the catch. So he's one of the premier talents in the league at wide receiver, and he looks like it. Guy looks like an absolute alien when he's on the field. So he just absorbs tackles, and he had the injury concerns coming out of college, but he's been fairly healthy his entire NFL career. Knock on wood. But I love DK Metcalf. I think he's definitely a buy.
I remember. Do you play on Underdog at all?
I don't. It's not legal in Connecticut.
Oh man, I forgot. Yeah, Connecticut's one of the. But I just remember, I was doing my best ball. That's my addiction on there. I'll just sit on there all day and do best ball drafts. And he was going as the wide receiver 35 like at one point in the preseason, I was like, geez, I was just like, just DK Metcalf, DK Metcalf, DK Metcalf. I was like, give me that. And then Tyler Lockett was just as automatic as like the wide receiver 48, you know what I mean? Just like bottom wide, you know. So yeah, the Seattle offense really ended up paying off this year. You know, I think we'll see what happens this year. You know, I almost think, you know, we could see a little bit of regression back down to the mean for Geno Smith, and maybe, you know, the Seattle offense doesn't like continue these strides next year, but we'll see what happens. I do expect DK Metcalf to be good regardless and certainly get his. Next man up here, we did talk about him a little bit earlier, but I figured we'd give him his own section, Jerry Jeudy. Like I was saying, wide receiver 11 since week 7, put up a 67 reception, 972 yard and 6 touchdown line for the year. Yeah, route running, technique, just a tactician out there. You know, this is a guy who, you know, just if you remember his draft profile, people were like, man, you know, safest wide receiver in the draft, the guy who, you know, he's going to be playing for sure for 10 years in this league, you know. So he just had incredible talent. And then for some reason, you know, people just hated him after his rookie year, after an 870-yard rookie. You know, I don't have it written down here. Just, you know, he had struggled with some drops.
Yeah.
Yes, that was true. And, you know, but people ran way too far with that, in my opinion. He was, I think, very good as rookie. Second year, he had a high ankle sprain and was playing with Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater. I think you can just toss that whole year out the window. And then last year, he was the only productive member of the Denver offense for the second half of the season. So, yeah, I think Jerry Jeudy's a great buy. You know, obviously it's year 4, so, you know, we haven't seen great fantasy production yet. So fantasy manager recency bias, so they're done with him already. But yeah, I'll be buying him up, especially in wide receiver 3 territory. Absolutely.
Yeah, and to go back to that rookie year, he did have some drop issues. He also had the most uncatchable ball rate in the entire NFL his rookie season. So for targets to him, most of them weren't even catchable. I forget what percentage it was. It was like 36% or something like that of targets towards him were just uncatchable. There's no way that he was catching the ball. So that's the kind of talent that he's been working with at the quarterback position. I don't care how bad Russell Wilson was this year. He's definitely better than Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock. So Jerry Jeudy, 10th in the NFL this season in yards per route run with 2.22, 8th in the NFL in slot percentage at 54.1%. I did a slot wide receiver thread on Twitter because the argument for Jackson Smith-Njigba is that he won't be a perennial talent in the NFL because he's strictly a slot receiver. 9 out of the top 12 wide receivers in PPR to finish the year played a majority of their percentage in the slot. Justin Jefferson,
slots like the new cheat code. Actually, I would say the opposite.
Exactly. Yeah. Justin Jefferson played 29% of his snaps in the slot. He scored 67% of his points in the slot. So you're talking about a significant competitive advantage for a top receiver like Jerry Jeudy going up against a nickel corner, maybe even a safety sometimes, possibly even a linebacker that has to cover him in the slot. It's just not going to happen. He was 16th in YAC with 416 yards and 4th in yards after the catch per reception and 16th in ADOT and 3rd in yards after the catch on passes of 20 yards or more. So you're talking about a guy that he is probably a low end wide receiver 1 that you're able to buy for low end wide receiver 2 right now, if he stays healthy for a full season. But we just talked about his points per game. He's good when he plays. It's just a matter of, can we keep him on the field for 17 games? So
that'll be the question. And yeah, you know, I think obviously Russell Wilson and Sean Payton, I think will probably be even the biggest one. You know, just how is Sean Payton and Russell Wilson going to work together? Is Russell Wilson actually cooked, or, you know, was this last year just an anomaly? I do think Russell Wilson's best days are certainly behind him, but, you know, I think he can get it together. You know, last year, I just don't know you never know what's going on in people's personal lives. You know what I mean? Like, these people are, you know, the NFL players are people too. I know it's a cheesy line, but you know what I mean? Like, what was going on with Russ? You know, last year, you know, maybe his head wasn't fully into it. He just made a big move. You never know how that affects people, you know, first year in, you know what I mean? So hopefully, you know, things are a little bit more settled down for Russell Wilson this year. So I think Jerry Jeudy's going to have a big year. Next man up I have here is Stefon Diggs, though. And, you know, this is another kind of cheating old wide receiver, you know, whatever. But I can't help myself when I see a 29 or 30-year-old wide receiver in the top 10 in dynasty rankings. I just have to sell, you know, sell. And you know what? And actually, you know, I'm a guy who gets out, you know, it kind of probably to my detriment a little bit in dynasty, but I always like, you know, 28-year-old wide receiver. I'm always like, I got to get out now. You know what I mean? Like I want full value for him. So, you know, I try to cash out for like 2 or 3 first round picks. So obviously in 25 plus dynasty leagues, I'm not even sure if I have a share of Stephon Diggs just because he's at that range for me. Like I just shove people out the door when they kind of hit that 29-year-old age range. But yeah, ninth season in 2023, outside the top 30 wide receivers, six times I think I have here. And although he finished as the wide receiver 4, I think he had like a crazy 4-game stretch from weeks 13 through 17 or somewhere in that 4 weeks where we finished like outside the top 40 wide receivers each time. It just wasn't quite the same after that Josh Allen elbow injury. And, he has a lot of miles for even a 29-year-old. This man's been playing in the NFL for a long time. I remember when my first year playing fantasy football, I played it when I was a little bit as a kid, but my first year, I'm getting into fantasy football this year. Stephon Diggs was in his first or second year, and I remember having him on my team. So, he's been playing a long time, and he has a lot of tread, not a lot of tread on those tires, I should say. So, what are you doing with Stephon Diggs? Should we be riding him out considering how productive he is?
So he's under contract until 2025. So that keeps him with Josh Allen for the next 2 seasons at least.
Probably with that, you never know how with NFL contract, but probably you're right.
Yeah. So like I mentioned before, I'm big into the Devy. I just made a Devy trade this week, actually. I tanked. So I traded all of like my players that had any worth to competitive teams. And I ended up gathering a pretty good amount of youth from this class. So I wanted to get what I viewed as like a sure wide receiver 1 for next season. So I went out and traded for Stephon Diggs, and I traded Quentin Johnston and Zay Flowers to do it. So I do. So he's going in like the early to mid 3rd round in dynasty startup drafts, which I think is a perfectly fair place for him to go. He goes after Jalen Waddle and Garrett Wilson and Amon-Ra St. Brown, which is fine. I'm okay with valuing those guys more, considering they're 6-7 years younger in some instances than Stephon Diggs. But yeah, I'm fine paying like a 1st-round pick for Stephon Diggs. I don't have any problem with that, really, because I think for the next 2 years he's still going to be a wide receiver 1. So I'll take the discount.
You're probably right. And, it's maybe to my detriment in dynasty leagues, but I can't help it. No, I'm like, if I can get a 1st-round pick for Stephon Diggs, yeah, let me re-roll. You know what I mean? Like, what if you get a Stephon Diggs? You know what I mean? So that's always where my head's at. I look at that Justin Jefferson, T. Higgins in the late 1st round a couple years ago. You know what I mean? Like, man, give me a 1st-round pick for Stephon Diggs. You can get even like a high or mid 1st-round pick for Stephon Diggs even. So,
like I just said, I traded Quentin Johnston for him. So that's like a 105 to like 108 range for him. And then Zay Flowers on top. So it's also like a 2nd-round pick, probably.
You just never know when that floor falls out so quickly, though. You know what I mean? Like DeAndre Hopkins fantasy value. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Top 5 wide receiver 3 value. You know what I mean? It happens so fast. They're not running back quick. But man, like as soon as they're 30 and they start showing decline, that's it. That's it for forever almost. They get hurt. Or, the productivity drops for 1 season and it never recovers. So,
yep.
Stephon Diggs is almost getting to the point, it's just like, man, like this is when, he's been doing it for so long. Not many players play Pro Bowl level for 10 years. That's a long time. You know what I mean? So, he's kind of getting into unicorn territory at this point. So, I'd like I said, I'd like to jump out a little bit early as opposed to a little late. And when Stephon Diggs is 30 next year, in the 2024 offseason, I do think, he probably won't have significant value. So, I'd like to take advantage of now. Obviously, you're having a niche market here. You're not going to be able to sell them to anybody who's rebuilding or, there's a lot of dynasty managers like me who are very ageist. So, you know what I mean? So you won't be able to sell them to everybody, but yeah, I'll be shopping to those contenders and,
I like it. Yeah. You got to get out early sometimes before it's way too late. Like if you're stuck with like Ezekiel Elliott, for example, like you're not getting anything for Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah. You just ride him out. Like once you hit that point, like I always tell people, like there's a certain point you hit, like next offseason, for example, like Stephon Diggs might just be worth riding out at that point because he'll be 30 years old. Nobody will probably be paying a lot of value for him. So, like Derrick Henry, for example, I bought him for, Christian, it doesn't look so great now. I thought I got him for a bargain. I sent Christian Watson in a 2nd-round pick for him last offseason. That Christian Watson ended up making me pay for that a little bit. But Derrick Henry, I'm not chopping Derrick Henry this offseason. It's just like, who are they going to give me a second round pick for Derrick Henry? No, I'll just roll out there, hope it, until the wheels fall off. So,
yeah.
But I know you have a kid. So I know you're going to have to deal with that. We're probably on borrowed time as is right now anyway, without a child and crying in the background. So I'm going to do one more name here. We'll save the couple tight ends for another time. No, you know what? Honestly, guys, save your breath with the tight ends. Travis Kelce, and then you know what? Just get the last guy in the draft after that. So it's a freaking disaster every year. So last name I have up here is Jameson Williams, just the forgotten man. Recency bias for these fantasy people. This was the 12th pick in last year's draft. Had a giant touchdown in the last week or the second last week to the regular season and get called back. Coming off an ACL, didn't play most of the year. I don't think, those final 6 games was just getting his feet wet. I don't think there's anything to take away from a slow 5-6 games where he didn't play for most of the season. And he's a 12th pick. He's in wide receiver 3 territory in a lot of dynasty leagues right now. Yeah, he's a big buy for me. Late 23 first. I just sent the 111 for him in a super flex. That made me a little nervous. I might end up regretting that, but I just wanted another Jameson Williams share. But yeah, if I could send the 112, more 2-1 is probably somewhere I'd be a little bit more comfortable sending that pick. But Joe Mixon, I would trade Treylon Burks for Jameson Williams. I prefer Jameson Williams as a better player in my opinion. So those were some of my thoughts. What do you think?
Jerry Jeudy or Jameson Williams? Who do you want?
That is really tough. Give me Jerry Jeudy. Barely.
So Jameson Williams is being valued at wide receiver 17 right now in keep trade cut. He's typically going in the middle.
That's higher than I thought. That's higher than when I was looking before. That's higher than I thought.
And for that reason, I think he's a sell for me, because if I could get like a Chris Godwin, Jerry Jeudy, Michael Pittman, Debo, Ayuk, all those guys plus for Jameson Williams. And like you said, he played 6 games, so you can't knock him necessarily for playing 6 games, but he had 1 catch in the 6 games. He had like the one end around carry. Granted, the 1 catch was a 41-yard touchdown. So that's what you think that you're going to be getting out of Jameson Williams, the ability to break the big play. He had the Packers touchdown that got called back for a penalty. And then he had the New York Jets play where he probably should have caught a touchdown, but it was underthrown. But we don't get points for those. They don't count. So he had 1 catch in 6 games. So is he just going to be like a big play guy that he could win you a week like Will Fuller? But then there's other weeks where he just disappears off the face of the earth and he gets you like 5 points in your flex or your wide receiver 3. He's a very talented player. I'm not saying he's not. Like you said, he was a 12th pick in the draft last year. I just don't know if I could pass up on taking a proven commodity at the wide receiver position for the price point that you have to pay to get Jameson Williams right now. I do like the 111 for him, though. I would trade the 111 for Jameson Williams. I just don't know if I would take Jameson Williams over those guys that I had just listed, and if I could get something on top of those guys for Jameson Williams.
That's a pretty aggressive ranking. If it's wide receiver 17, where I was at, wherever site I was on, maybe it was Fantasy Pros Dynasty Rankings or something. He was maybe wide receiver 23 or 24 or something like that. So that's a little bit more of an approachable point for me. Wide receiver 17, you actually might be right. If that's where people were holding his value, that's a little heavy for me. That is in Chris Godwin territory. So, I do think he's more of in that wide receiver 2 borderline, like I said, right next to kind of Treylon Burks, but I would take Jameson Williams ahead of Treylon Burks. Some of the guys that you listed, I would prefer Jameson Williams to Brandon Ayuk personally. That's aggressive. I'm just not, it's just something just makes me nervous. I know Brandon Ayuk had a very good season, just kind of a low key, very productive season, but it's just, with Trey Lance probably starting, Debo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, and George Kittle locked up for the next couple of years. It's just, I just have a hard time trusting Ayuk. And, and Jameson Williams, Michael Pittman is also very close for me. That's a very even, I'd probably have them very close to back in my ranking. So, those are question marks for me.
Yeah. And again, it's not to say that he's not a talented player, but when you could provide more value to your team and get multiple assets for one asset and they're fairly similar assets, I'll take the side with more value every single time and make my roster better. So
that's smart. Yeah, you know what? You brought in a lot of great stats today, man. I learned some things today, so I really appreciate that. It's been great having you on. Tell us about what you're working on coming up. Where can we find some of your stuff?
So you can find me on Twitter at JCJ Dynasty. I'm the director of content over at Dynasty Domain. So on Twitter, it's at Domain Dynasty. We put out YouTube videos every week, probably like 3 or 4. We're doing a lot of rookie content right now, and we have a locals page. So for $2.99 a month, you get access to our Discord. You ask for trade advice. We have Devi rankings. We have our ADP tool, so you could see where these assets are going in rookie draft, or excuse me, not rookie drafts, but startup mock drafts. And you could kind of compare. We don't have a trade analyzer, but if you're looking at startup value where these guys are being drafted, that's more or less telling you how the market views these players. So yeah, you don't have like your keep trade cut tool to where you throw like a guy in, you get like a grade back or like what's the value. But if you go to our spreadsheet, put in wide receivers from the 2021 class or whatever, the 2022 class, you could see that Jameson Williams is being valued like 2 rounds higher than Treylon Burks. So stuff like that. It's a really cool tool where we just implemented points per game. So you could see that as well, because we're big points per game as opposed to overall points and stuff like that. It's like a little archaic to just give just total points and not put any context behind it.
Well, well, in classic fantasy analyst terms, you use whatever benefits you in your argument. Absolutely, so you use fantasy points per game if that's the if that helps your player that you're arguing for, and you use total finish if that's what helps.
Absolutely, I like giving the stats behind it, because at the end of the day, I'm a guy sitting in a room right now with a lamp behind me. I'm no more of an expert than anybody else sitting out there. I just try to take useful information and package it together so it's accessible to people that may not have the time to or the wherewithal to get all this information together and give a coherent argument as to which side you should want or stuff like that. So I just love doing it. Just fun.
Yeah, it's been good. Yeah, like I've been creating content a year now, and it took off a lot quicker than I thought it would. And I'm I've started making this a part-time job and everything now, and so yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's been a lot of fun though. Like you said, it's always it's a great job. We do it for free. So I was doing it for free for a long time. So
yeah.
But yes, it was great having you on there. I had to double check and see if I put in that last J on that JCJ Dynasty. I was doing this right when I got off work last night, throwing this YouTube video together, and the Twitter, and I did. I put the right Twitter name. It's not. I've messed up Twitter handles in the past before. So
yeah,
it was. I appreciate that. It was great having you on, though, JC. Thank you so much. You can check our stuff out. I'll be doing this podcast every Sunday. Doing mainly Dynasty, but as we get into April, we'll be doing some best ball when we start doing that. Doing an article every week for SGPN as well, and doing a couple articles for the Right Way Sports Network. So, but thank you for joining us, everybody. Have a great rest of your weekend, and I will see you on Super Bowl Sunday. Have a great week.
Go Chiefs.
Thank you. Go Chiefs.